Let's welcome Marcello. Go ahead. I just want to say you didn't bring any champagne for me like Jagdeep did last night.
Not in the morning.
Not in the morning.
You.
Hey, we could have a mimosa, right? Jagdeep has gotten us started on this bad trajectory here. Okay, so let's start with a simple. Let's just start with. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do at Moderna.
Yeah. So Marcello Damiani. I'm the Chief Digital Officer and Operational Excellence Officer at Moderna. Joined the company in 2015. We were around 100 people at that time, and when I joined, Stéphane Bancel, who was the CEO that I worked with before, told me that this is a new modality called messenger RNA that probably will transform the world. And at that time, I didn't understand science. I'm not a scientist. And go and looked at what messenger RNA is and what it can do and learn about it. And I thought, there can be potential here. So that's where I joined Moderna. I come from high tech, and prior to high tech, I was in aerospace. So software all the way, but that's previously what I've done.
So let's get to the Moderna story then. So I already alluded to the fact that Moderna calls itself a digital biotech company. What does that mean? Walk us through the Moderna story and how did this come to pass?
Yeah. So if you look at messenger RNA is an information molecule. Instead of being 0, 1s, it's AUCG. It's 4 letters. And with those 4 letters, you can produce any protein in the body. Protein is what makes our body works. This is hormones, this is enzymes, everything. And to cure or prevent disease. So this is what messenger RNA in a nutshell. So when you look at it like this, you say it's information-based. And when you want to build the best version of Moderna, how can you leverage all the data and the digital world really to build this best version of Moderna? And what we looked at is how can we improve the quality of everything we do? That's our first goal. How can we accelerate the cycle time of research and beyond research developing drugs? The third piece is how can we scale this company? And this is 2015, we were 100 people. How can we scale this company? And we've seen today the results. We were able to scale. And the last piece is how can we optimize everything that we do? And so this is how this all came about, is really building the best version of Moderna to leverage messenger RNA.
So how big is Moderna today, employees?
So today we are around 3,600 people.
In 7 years?
In 7 years. But still very small compared to many big pharmaceutical today.
So let's dig a little deeper into mRNA. I just want to make sure everybody's on the same page as you. Walk us, because I've read that mRNA is basically a hexadecimal technology. So give us a quick primer on mRNA.
Yeah, so messenger RNA is really 4 letters that produce protein, amino acids. We discussed the DeepMind and how it helps in the structure of those proteins. What messenger RNA is, you instruct the cells in the body to produce those proteins to cure or prevent disease. So in the case of vaccines, it prevents disease, produce antigen, your body react against those, your immune system, and protect you for the long term. In terms of therapeutics, it produces missing enzyme or missing activities and correct those and therefore cure the person. So this is really what messenger RNA is. And if you look at the process of messenger RNA itself, the process starts with DNA, and then you transform this DNA into messenger RNA, and you encode for whatever protein you need. So that's the process. And where software plays its role in all this is anything that you learn, you can replicate to any other protein or any other messenger RNA you're working. So if I give you an example, And this is an example in vaccination, in our COVID vaccine. We learned across the years where to cut the DNA to be able to stitch together long sequences of messenger RNA. So we learned this many times. And if we haven't had that learning, probably we would have failed 2 to 3 times to produce the COVID sequence. And 2 to 3 times, this is wasting months of time before we were able to put it to clinical development and clinical trials. So this is how we operate, and this is how we built the company.
Yeah, one of the fascinating things about this story is because you actually take all this know-how that you've developed around, in this case, I'm out of my expertise zone here, but cutting sort of these DNA sequences. And then you can apply it to sort of any domain that, because it's really the same process in terms of how you inject, or whatever the word is, into your body.
Yeah, and what we did is we codified this. So when we started working on messenger RNA, I sat down, and my team sat down, was the scientist. We were literally in the labs, was the scientists, to understand how they work and what they are doing. And we worked with them to understand how we can help them for 2 reasons. One, to reduce errors, because they were literally putting messenger RNA sequences, which are long thousands of letters, in Excel spreadsheet and juggling with those and so on. So we started by codifying this. We built a portal where they can go use existing and previous sequences. They drag and drop the sequences, and we reduced the risk of error. So we built this portal for the scientists where they can upload, download, they do all the sequences they want. And then what we looked at is what is preventing them from doing more experiments? How can they scale up drastically? And scientists, they build their messenger RNA, then they go to the lab, pipette the messenger RNA, and so on. And what we've done is really, we took all this piece from the scientist's hand, built this centralized lab, and automated all the way, and collected all the data from this automation. And this data helped us improve the sequence, give feedback to the scientists, give them information on what can be easily produced, is difficult to produce, how they change their sequences to make it happen, and so on. So we codified all this information to help them. And we didn't stop there. Then they go and do the experiment. And the experiment as well, we codified this. So we had, with time, a wealth of data that helped us build algorithmics to improve what we are doing, and helped us accelerate the pace of the science, the research.
Yes, for those of you who've attended past conferences, you've often heard me talk about how it's really important to codify know-how. And I think what is really powerful about the Moderna story, I just want to sort of underscore this, is they've sort of done this in a way. Think about when a new employee comes into your organization, particularly in one as sophisticated a field as we're talking about. How do you get people to start at the same baseline as the experts who are already in there, or maybe people have left, right? And this is sort of, they walk in and they inherit a platform of knowledge that has been codified that allows them to start on day one at a much higher baseline than we would typically be able to do. I want to ask you one question, which is a little bit off tangent here, but the thing that amazed me about both the mRNA companies was the vaccine candidates themselves were developed literally in 2 days. Well, at least that's what we read in the popular press.
Yeah, the sequence, as soon as it was published on the web in China, you had the sequence. You didn't need the virus like all technology. You have the sequence, and once you have the sequence, you develop the vaccine. You design the vaccine. You don't develop the vaccine.
But you had the platform in place to basically
we had everything. It was plug and play here. We had everything in place. All you needed to change is the sequence, the code of the sequence that came from the virus.
Right. So once you know the code of the virus, if I understand you correctly, it's really not that hard conceptually, assuming you have all the science done already, right?
Yeah, because everything else remains the same. So every vaccine that we do, 100% of the chemical matters are the same.
Yep.
All you're changing is the code, the sequence of which virus you're targeting.
So it really is like manipulating software code.
Absolutely.
That speaks volumes, doesn't it? But that's why we already have, by the way, a bivalent vaccine. If you think about how long it would typically take to come up with something new, this really speaks.
I mean, the bivalent vaccine is a good example. We received from the CDC, I think, in end of June, what bivalent they wanted in the vaccine. And in September, we were releasing this.
I really want to emphasize that point. I mean, this is mind-boggling, right? So you get a genetic sequence in June, and by September, we have vaccines. And, I'm Mr. 5 vaccines on board. So I've already had the bivalent.
I had one. There you go.
I talked to Marcello, and he says, go get yours, so I go get mine. But talk broadly about the role of software, because I think what the story you're sharing is just so powerful, and I think so many companies could be doing more with software, and they don't even have to be in that sophisticated a business, right? So how do you think about sort of the role of software? And you can weave in AI too, but just more broadly about software, and then we can go deeper into AI.
Yeah, I think software gives you two things. I mean, in our case, to be able to get the data, you need to run the experiments. To be able to run the experiments, you need to structure it in a way that gives you the data. And you build software to be able to do this. So this is how we build software across the company, is with the understanding how are we going to collect the data that will help us improve. Then comes AI or algorithmic in general,
right.
Because AI is broad. And how can you use AI really to improve what you do or to improve the outcome? And we have several examples where we build this in a way that can help us, and I can talk.
Yeah, we'll get. But the one thing that Marcello did tell me, I hope I remember this correctly, was when they got there, the scientists got there, he was looking at how they were sort of keeping track of some of the DNA sequences, and I think you said it was an Excel spreadsheet or something like that.
Yeah, I mean,
and you think about these long strings of, the rest of us deal with normal numbers, and we screw that up. So when you're dealing with these long DNA sequences, which have letters and numbers in weird combinations or permutations.
And then they were doing thousands, so that's...
The thought of that alone makes me smile, not in a good way, but it's like, oh, we could get totally messed up because somebody, we used to worry about payroll where somebody typed in an extra zero or something like that, right? And this is so much more. Let's talk about AI, because I know you've moved on to AI and you're doing a lot more with AI in manufacturing, but also in discovery. Walk us through that.
Yeah, and AI, everyone looks at AI as moonshot or boiling the ocean. In our case, we took a very pragmatic approach for AI. So first of all, we have an AI academy in the company. We want every single employee, manager, executive to go through that academy. And the reason is simple. People are afraid of AI. They don't understand it. It needs to be demystified. So this is the first reason why everyone should go in the company to AI. The second is when we go through those training, it's 2 days, 2.5 days training. In the first they learn about AI, but in the second day they work on use cases. Tell us, now that you understand a bit more, tell us how in your world we can help you by building algorithmics. And we use those use cases really to build priorities on where we should be investing. I'll give you 2 examples of AI. One, in our personalized cancer vaccine. So this is now in phase 2 clinical trial. This is individualized medicine. So we take the biopsy of the patient and we understand the mutation. Cancer is all about mutation in the cells compared to normal cells. And sometime in the cells, you have hundreds to thousands mutations. And what we want to do is that we want to trigger your immune system to attack those mutations, because we believe that by attacking those mutations, they will attack the tumor cells. But we can encode up to 34. So we need to pick 34 among hundreds to thousands. And we need to pick those 34 that we believe will trigger the highest response from the immune system. This is where we use the algorithmics. This is how we pick the 34. So this is very, very key. It's in phase 2 clinical trial today. It's not phase 1, it's phase 2. We'll have the data by the end of the year.
So phase 1 is animal trials?
No, phase 1 is human.
Okay,
Yeah.
phase 1 human.
Phase 1 is human, phase 2 as well. So we'll have the data by the end of the quarter, and we'll see where we are. And this is really a complete new way of building medicine. And if you look at it, from biopsy back to patient, we digitize the whole thing.
Oh, wow.
So once we have the sequence and understand the mutation, it goes in silico to the cloud. We run the algorithm, goes back to manufacturing, ship the vial to the hospital for this individual patient.
I talk to Marcello, and every time I talk to him, I just have the same reaction. Wow. It's because the story just, I talk to him every day, so it's like every 6 months, and then you get these evolutions of this story, and it just never ceases to amaze me. We've been talking about precision health for years. I have to tell you a funny story. I actually hosted a precision health series of conversations, and finally I actually stopped the panelists myself. I said, I'm your host, but I'm tired of listening to this stuff about why doctors will never buy into this precision health thing and their cultural barriers, which we're going to talk about next. But here's an example of where we have finally, after years and years of this is precision health. And I think this is a very powerful story, which is why I say, we can build stronger organizations and a better world. I mean, what makes us more hopeful than something like what we're just hearing? And then I think about, manufacturing automation. Those things don't have emotions, they don't have genes, right? And if we can do this with the human body, think about how much more potential, and we are doing those things too. We are building digital twins, we are optimizing, but this is sort of a very powerful domain that is so valuable to all of us. You also use it in manufacturing quality.
Yeah, so I gave an example in the medical field, but we use it as well for day-to-day operations. In our preclinical production, when we go and quality test the messenger RNA, so we have a target messenger RNA that we want, and we want to make sure that what we produced is equivalent to the target. So we do quality controls to make sure that's the case, even in research. And what we've done is, we analyzed the outcome of people doing it manually, because this is how it was done. People go visually, and they use tools, but they go visually and say, yeah, this matches the target. And when we looked at it and discovered that even to a single person, that we show the same sequence twice, they disagree with themselves sometime up to 15%. So we decided that we're going to build an algorithm, machine learning, and see how it performs against the human. And of course, it's not tedious for a machine to be able to distinguish. And we build this, and we use it now in our preclinical quality control for messenger RNA.
And I guess you're saying the machine won?
Yeah. So
bad news for all of us, but oh well. But we'd rather have better treatments as a result, right? But there's more to this story. We don't have time to go into it, but if you get a chance, talk to Marcello about what actually goes into sort of manufacturing quality. It's a really powerful story. One of the things you said to me was, with the Facebooks and the Googles of this world, the data is sort of generated automatically. Yeah. They don't have to do anything research, they have data. But yours is much more intentional.
If you look at Facebook or Google or any of the tech, data is native. They have data. In our case, we need to produce the data. We need to run the experiment to get the data. We need to collect data. You've shown some example of how we collect the data. And then you need to structure all this data, gather it to make inference from that data and to make decisions from that data. So you need to build your company with the aim of collecting this data in a structured way that will help you with the outcome. This is where it's very important that you codify everything that you do, from manufacturing to clinical trials to research. And because you can connect the dot afterwards.
Yes.
Because when you improve in one place, you have a network effect. You improve everywhere else, especially in our case where we have a platform. Literally, you're changing the code. So if you improve how you optimize the sequence of messenger RNA, you improve it for everything. If you improve how you optimize the protein production in the body, you improve it for everything else. If you improve the production, the same. So that's why it was very important from day one that we build this, what we call digital biotech.
So one thing I just want to highlight again is the AI Academy, because we used to talk a few years ago about every company needing like all their employees, like GE tried this, Goldman Sachs tried this, get them to learn how to code. I think the new language is really, let's get them familiar with AI and machine learning, which sort of automatically involves some level of software. But I want to go back to your cartridge story, because that's where I think you were going, which is how easy it is to sort of switch out of one therapeutic area. That sort of, you've used that cartridge analogy. Yeah. So if you could share that with the audience, that would be great.
So if you look at COVID, the COVID vaccine, the messenger RNA is the same. What you change is the sequence. So let's now say RSV with everyone, or flu. Everyone talk about those viruses that are increasing this season, because it's been years that we didn't see them. We are working on a phase 3 for flu. We're working on a phase 3 for RSV. What we do is we change the cartridge. So what we're changing is really the sequence. Instead of COVID, or the bivalent COVID, we just put RSV or flu. And in flu, if you look at it, historically, flu was based on what the WHO organization gives at the beginning of the year for the sequence that you need for the almost 9 months or 10 months afterwards. So with time, all this change, and the virus change and evolve, and we can adjust and adapt accordingly. Because as I said, end of June, we had the sequence for COVID, we produced and delivered in September. So you can think how flexible and agile the technologies is to allow you really to tackle vaccines. But it's not only vaccines. I talked about therapeutic. It's the same principle. When you have the sequence for one rare disease, you have the sequence for any other rare disease. All you need to change is the protein sequence inside the messenger RNA.
So I'm going to close with one last question. In the meantime, if you could get your questions ready for Marcello. So let's just summarize with sort of like, what are with all your experience now at Moderna and sort of your thinking about this, what are some of the principles you would recommend to our audience about how should you build a software-first organization? What are some of the things you really need to pay attention to?
I think from my perspective, what's important is it's not only my organization who's building a software company. The company needs to decide that it is a software company or a digital company. Because what's important is the outcome. And I work very closely with my colleague, and when they come to me and say, you need to help us with digital, and I say, okay, but you need to help me understand what you want to achieve. And we look a lot. I mean, there's the shiny objects, which is nice, but there's all the processes. We look a lot around how you engineer your processes really to deliver the outcome, and work with them really to codify this in a way that we can repeat and use and get from it the data that we need to achieve the goal. So this is how we built it. I've been sitting in labs in the early days with the scientists. I've been sitting afterwards with our clinician just to understand what they need as information, but as well how we can accelerate the cycle, how we reduce the viscosity in all the processes, and that's how we built it.
With that, let me turn it over to the audience. There's a question from my colleague, Margaret Wiersum, in the back.
So you talked a lot about...
We'll get you a mic in a minute, in a second.
Hi.
So you talked a lot about the product development, but I'm more interested in the production. Obviously, that was much more of a time-consuming process than actually inventing the product as you described it. So how much proprietary technology is there in the production process of mRNA therapeutics? And given the proprietary nature of it, do you ever see this as a competitive advantage versus the product itself?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say it's a spectrum. The more you go towards R&D, the more it's proprietary. So if you go to preclinical production, if you go to research and so on, it's software that we've built. The more you go into commercial production, it's software that we buy. But I think the key is how you're integrating all this and stitching it together to achieve what you need to achieve. So this is how we built it. So there's big pieces of it, yeah, it's proprietary and it's a competitive advantage, of course. And all the algorithmics piece as well. Because once you have all this in place, you're building on top of it algorithmics to use the data, and all this is proprietary.
Jim?
I think it's an amazing story, and I had a chance to talk to Marcello a little last night, and I think what I'd like to know is what you're doing with these individualized cancer treatments, right? You're kind of moving from mass production to mass personalization. What is the role of digital in enabling that kind of a pivot, from to mass personalization?
Yeah. So if you look at it, with COVID, we scaled up because you needed to produce big volumes. With personalized cancer, based on the data, and hopefully it's positive, we need to scale out because you're going to produce small batches to deliver to a single patient. And what's important is that you have the best cycle time to deliver this to the patient. So the role of digital is making sure that the same principle as before, we are delivering the best quality, accelerated cycle time, and that we are able to scale out throughout the company. And this is what we will be working on should we have positive data in the next few months.
So scaling up and scaling out, very comparable with digital.
Absolutely.
Other questions? There's one in the back.
Hi, Marcello. Thanks for your comments. My question is around if everything's about replacing the sequence, like the cartridge as you call it, is the current drug or vaccine approval scheme that we have, regime that we have, run by the FDA and others, is that outdated? Right? Should we be doing more like adaptive experimentation, or are there other? What would be like Moderna's ideal
But
form?
I think the FDA has evolved. Look, the last vaccine that was approved was the sequence, the BA4, BA5. It was based on the BA1 data results. So I think the regulatory landscape is evolving and has evolved during the COVID timeframe and has evolved to understand as well the technology. And I think this is good news for everyone because it will help really how you accelerate the pace of developing medicines and delivering medicines to patients.
Mic's coming your way. Actually, let's go Diana while the mic comes.
So thank you so much for your presentation, very enlightening. My question has to do with precision medicine, personalized medicine. I think this highlights the digital divide in terms of access and equity to those who really can't afford that precision medicine. Anything that you're doing proactively to address that and increase access to those who may not have the coverage or the resources to pay for that?
Yeah, I mean, for the time being, we're not at the commercial stage, but everything we're doing, we want this to be accessed by the people who cannot afford it. And we're working with the authorities, not only in the US, but outside of the US. Give you an example, we're building a manufacturing in Kenya, in Africa, to be able to deliver our products. And one manufacturing facility can produce any of our medicines. As I said, the manufacturing process is the same, all you're changing is the sequences. So this is how we're trying to tackle this across the globe, really to give access to the population who needs it most.
All right, I've been given the kill signal.
Oh.
So with that, let's thank Marcello for a really informative discussion.
Thank you.